Okay, be honest with me. It's just you and I. That's all. It's just us. Be honest with me. Do you consider yourself to be an unlearner? Like truly, truly. I always say there are three key things that make an unlearner. If you question, if you learn, and if you grow, then I always say you're an unlearner if you tick all three of those boxes. Now, when I share that concept, most people are often reminded of the concept of a growth mindset. And in essence, there is a huge overlap between unlearning and a growth mindset. And that, my wonderful, wonderful unlearner, is exactly what we are going to talk about today. Welcome to this episode of the Unlearners podcast. The Unlearners. Learn, change, relearn. I think if you take one courageous step at a time, it's going to be such the Unlearners. Learn, change, grow. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about those three things. I mentioned those three things in the introduction that are almost like a checklist for being an unlearner. If you are going, I wonder if I'm an unlearner. I feel like I am. I do challenge the status quo, but how do I know? So let's look at those three things and then we'll get into what the growth mindset is, what the overlaps are, and also how you can build a growth mindset as you think about your unlearning journey. Wherever it is you are, you might be moving homes, you might be changing jobs, you may be just reinventing yourself, you may be on a spiritual journey that is a kind of awakening. Whatever it is, guys, whatever it is, you're an unlearner. You are here. I love you. I virtually hug you. And we are going to talk about how you can use the concepts around the growth mindset to help you in your unlearning journey. So let's look at the very first one. The very first one is questioning. You know you're an unlearner if you question. And here's what that means. It means you consistently challenge what you've previously known to be true. So if you've known something to be true, you are an unlearner if you question it. Now, here's one way to think about that. Think about your family and the things that you were brought up believing about the world. I had a very interesting conversation once with Colin Wall, just a brilliant, brilliant man. And he told the story about how when he was brought up in apartheid South Africa, he was taught that Black people, people of color like myself, are baddies. And he used that word that I thought was so cute. But he was taught that they were bad, that we were bad, my people were bad. Not because they were actually bad, but because that was a truth that he was taught. And I thought it was so interesting. And that's what that is. So that's what questioning is about. Questioning is about saying, I know this thing to be true, or at some level of my being, I've been told that this thing is true. How do I question it? How do I double click on it and go, how relevant is this thing really? How true is it? Where's the evidence? What's the data? And that for me is questioning. The second thing you do if you're an unlearner is you learn. Well, yeah, you're probably going, of course, Zanele, hello. Just by breathing, I'm learning all the time. So here's the idea around learning. It's that you allow everything, every situation, every occurrence, and every person to leave you better and wiser than you were before. That's what learning is about. Learning is about going into a situation, going into a conversation, going into a meeting, and into a new situation or context, and allowing that context not to leave you the same, not to be the same person afterwards, because you have learned. And that for me is what learning is all about. So that's number two. The third thing, now if you've ticked all two, well done. We've got one more. Let's see if you actually qualify to be an unlearner. The third one is that you grow. Unlearners grow without a shadow of a doubt. And here's the meaning behind growing that I use. Growing is when you let change peel back your layers and reveal your infinite potential. Growing is about allowing change to happen to you, or to happen for you, or happen around you. Whatever term you choose to use, it's up to you. But growing, in my perception, is about allowing change to do what change does. And that is peeling back those layers. Because change, guys, change will show you who you are. When things change around us, they always invite the next best version of ourselves to come through. But the challenge is, it's not always the next best version that comes through. Sometimes we almost move back in terms of the empowered version of ourselves that comes through. Sometimes it's a different version of ourselves that's more scared, that's more fearful, that's less aligned, that's less empowered, that comes through after a situation of change. So you know you're an unlearner if you tick all three of those boxes. If you grow, which was the last one, you learn and you question. So in order, 1, you know you're an unlearner if you question, if you learn, and if you grow. Now let's expand then the growth part, because today's conversation is about this idea of the growth mindset, what it means, what it's all about, but also how it applies to your specific unlearning journey. Now, the growth mindset is a concept that was developed and really popularized by Carol Dweck. Wrote a beautiful book on it. Please feel free to go and read. I strongly recommend reading the book, but also looking up her work. And the idea behind the growth mindset is it's a way of viewing life and challenges. So it's almost like a lens through which to perceive the things that happen in the world, the things that happen around us, who we are, our friends, our family. Growth mindset is how we can interpret the things that happen around us. So for example, part of the hypothesis that Carol builds in the growth mindset is that there are almost these two, I don't want to say contrary, because they're not necessarily so, but because there is a little bit of gray, but yeah, we can call them that for the sake of this conversation. Mindsets. The first one is a fixed mindset and the second one is a growth mindset. Now, you may be very well familiar with these, but if you are, just humor me as I just explain for those of us who are being reborn to this topic and this idea. Now, the fixed mindset is a mindset that says, I've got what I've got. The world is what it is. My financial situation is what it is. I know what I know. That person is who they are. The baddie is the baddie. And the idea behind it is this idea of fixedness, that everything is fixed. Everything is immovable. It is what it is. And although this mindset can be extremely detrimental, and we'll speak about it just now, but it is a safety mechanism. When we hold a fixed mindset, in my perception and in the work that I do, there is a sense of wanting to create this false sense of safety, that I'm safe because everything is predictable. Everything is where it should be. I know just how much to give and not to give. I know who to trust and who to trust and who not to trust. I know my surroundings. There's a sense of safety. There's a sense of knowing and predictability there around the fixed mindset. However, if we think about obviously the cons of the fixed mindset, is that when you have a fixed mindset, it means you don't grow. You don't challenge yourself to be better. When you have a fixed mindset, it means that things just can't get better for you. You don't look for where the opportunities are. You don't look for where you could challenge yourself to really expand and grow who you are, who the world is, what your products do, how you impact society, etc., etc. So that's the fixed mindset. And the fixed mindset and the growth mindset, maybe before I move on, are not necessarily people. They are just mindsets that you can hold at a given time. So if you think about it, we can literally flux through the fixed and the growth mindset at any given time or throughout our lives. It's just a matter of being aware of which one it is that you are practicing, that you are using, that you are tapping into at any given time. So I thought that was really important to share, because often we go, oh, he's such a fixed mindset person. And you don't want to categorize a person as having having that mindset, because you will find, and oftentimes we say that because we haven't walked a mile in the person's shoes, but if you really double click into the person's life, you will find that there are instances and situations where that person does apply a growth mindset. You are just not aware of it. And as an unlearner, you want to not make assumptions or not make decisions and judgments based on assumptions that you haven't challenged. And that's really important. I really encourage you to listen to our assumptions episode that will really help you to think about what's the best way to move ahead with assumptions. Now let's move on then to the other mindset. So we've looked at the fixed mindset, what it is, what the potential dangers are around it, but also how it protects us, how the fixed mindset really is such an asset to us because it forms that beautiful safety net that creates predictability. You don't have as much of that fear of the unknown when you hold a fixed mindset because you've told yourself that you know what's going on. It's a lot like this unconscious incompetence where you think you know, but you're not putting yourself in a position to know. So let's come over to the growth mindset then. The growth mindset is a lot, in many ways, the opposite of that fixed mindset. The growth mindset says,
yes, I know I'm interrupting the episode, but it's just to let you know that if you're enjoying this, you are going to love our weekly newsletter. So every single week, I'm sending you tips, tools, insights to help you on your unlearning journey, but also I'm sending you updates about events, our various courses that are also going to support you as you learn, change, and grow. Okay, now, finally, let's get back to the episode.
It says things can improve. And if they do, it's up to me. Change can happen. I'm always growing. We're always expanding. We're always evolving. That thing is what it is right now, but it can evolve. It can improve. It can change. How do we make it so? So you'll find that the growth mindset is a lot more proactive. It's a lot more intentional and action-oriented than your fixed mindset, because your growth mindset is really all about saying, I understand that nothing is fixed. Everything can change when it is stimulated in a different way, whether by a person, whether by a group, whether in any kind of way, but more especially, I can start with my thoughts, with my mindset, and influence the situation. So it's almost having an internal locus of control where you say to yourself, I know that things can change, but I also know that if they can change, I'm the one to make it so. And so a person with a growth mindset is the type of person who looks at a situation and goes, how can this improve? How can this grow? I understand that this may not be the best thing, because sometimes something really, really horrible has happened and you've just gotten into a situation at work. Your leader or your line manager has called you into their office and you've just found out that you're redundant. You've been made redundant. Unfortunately, the company can no longer keep you. If you've got a fixed mindset, you will throw your toys out of the cart and say there's no way you're going to recover from this. You go home, you lie in bed for forever, and you just don't come out because you feel like the world is over. And now, although it's important to have that time, eat ice cream, do what you need to do, pamper yourself, recover. But a person with a growth mindset will do all of that recovery, do what they need to do, but they will say to themselves, things don't always have to be this way. How can I take agency in the situation and change things? How do I grow? How do I learn? What is there to learn in this situation? How do I then take what has happened and turn it into something that could yield positive results? Does that mean I now need to go out and speak to more people about my profile? Do I need to connect with other people on professional platforms to see who can hire me? Do I need to then start something up for myself and just become an entrepreneur? Do I need to grow my side hustle? So a person who has a growth mindset is very proactive in that way. Now, when we think about the cons then, because everything is almost has this beautiful duality that is beautiful. When we think about the growth mindset, oftentimes people will say a person with a growth mindset can sometimes be interpreted as consistently flaky, seeming very inauthentic, not necessarily being the type of person who allows themselves to be in the moment and to acknowledge what is happening in a realistic manner, or maybe what we like to call realistic or realism in that situation. Now, that's not necessarily true, but it can be perceived that way. So it's really important that as you apply your growth mindset, you also don't sacrifice the validation of what is actually happening. So validating the emotions that you feel. Think about losing your job, especially if this was a sense of security around providing for your family, being who you are, making your dreams come true, growing your side hustle, providing for your sick grandmother in the countryside or somewhere. There's a lot around that. So validate those emotions. And don't just spring into action. How can I change? And it's beautiful to be that, because urgency and adaptability and agility is so important. But pair your growth mindset with this validating those emotions, giving yourself an opportunity to feel what you feel and acknowledge that you've been hurt and it's okay. And pair that then with, okay, how do we move forward? What do I do? What's the next step? How do I learn? How do I change? How do I grow in this situation? And so that is the only con I can think about. If you can think about more cons around the growth mindset or more disempowering parts of having a growth mindset, please let me know. I think that for me is the only one I can think of, because having a growth mindset is so expansive, especially when you're an unlearner. There's very few that I can think about negative things around having a growth mindset. So let me know if you can think of any. Now, let's end off the episode with, what do you do then? What are some of the things that you can do as you build a growth mindset? Because some of us will very well know that we get into situations and sometimes it's really, really hard. I often say to clients when I work with large organizations that are dealing with individuals and we're dealing with just team members who are resisting change, I often just have to start off with saying, guys, change is hard. Change is hard, and we all know it because we've all been in that place. But unless we train ourselves to be good at change, it's just not going to show up randomly out of the blue. So how do we then make space for a growth mindset to happen, for us to also strengthen that muscle of applying that kind of mindset consistently, both in our personal lives and in our professional lives as well? So 3 key things that I think are really important. The very first one that you can start with is training yourself to seek growth opportunities. So at any given time, you can even set an alarm if you are just starting out. And wherever you are, whatever you're doing, for example, setting an alarm for every day at 12 o'clock or every Tuesday at 12 o'clock, if you want to start it off nice and easy and not startle yourself too much. Every Tuesday at 12 o'clock, you set an alarm, and wherever you are or whatever you are doing in that moment, you go, okay, you stop and you go, what are the growth opportunities in this situation? What am I learning? Who am I becoming? How am I changing? How am I evolving? You could be in the car driving to work when that alarm goes off. You could be at home nagging your child to make their bed or whatever it is. Or you could just be lying in bed, meditating, or whatever it is. Bring your awareness back into the moment and ask yourself, how do I shift into a growth mindset at this time? What are the opportunities to change, to learn, and to grow right now where I am with what I'm doing and who I'm with as well? And when you call your awareness into that situation, you'll be amazed by how you start to build the habit of bringing your awareness in, even when that alarm clock doesn't go off. So starting in that way, with maybe you can start with a month, or you can start with 2 months every Tuesday at 12 o'clock. This is just an example. Then you can practice that. So that's the first one, training yourself to seek growth opportunities. The second thing that you can do is you can challenge yourself in a given situation. So very similarly to the very first one, you could set it up as something that's timed, or you can literally just challenge yourself each and every single day to take the one thing that challenges you the most. Take the one thing that's the most annoying, that's the most irritating in your life, or that you find you just can't think of a solution to. And sit with that particular thing and challenge yourself to see the good in that thing. Challenge yourself to see how that particular instance, that particular incident, hardship, challenge is growing you. And this one may be really, really hard, but give yourself the grace of being in a space that you enjoy. I get my best ideas in the bath. So when I'm thinking about something that's been really tough, or a person I'm really challenged to love in a moment, I might go into the bath and sit there and soak and think about that person. What is it that I love about that person? What is it that that person does really well? How do they impact the world positively? So give yourself an opportunity to challenge yourself, especially around the things that you feel are the hardest to apply that growth mindset to. The very last one that we're going to close off with is exposing yourself to learning. This one is not necessarily to say, go into the library or, read brand new books. But this one is to say, put yourself in opportunities where you are exposed to something new. Give yourself an opportunity to be exposed to something that rubs you up the wrong way. And it's new, it annoys you, it's different from what you would originally do. But just a tiny opportunity, maybe every month, last Friday of the month, for example, you might say, I'm going to do something, I'm going to eat something, I'm going to watch something, I'm going to listen to something that doesn't necessarily fall into my norms, but could challenge me to see things differently, could challenge me to think differently. And through that experience, what you find is that you stimulate your brain in a brand new way. And that's how you form all of those beautiful dendritic connections or dendrite connections that in your brain that weren't there previously, that lead to beautiful fluid intelligence, where you become the kind of person who can draw from a wide array of experiences, of insights, even though you are maybe restricted to a certain field in the work that you do or in your interests. So those are the 3 key things you can do to apply a growth mindset or to develop a growth mindset in your unlearning journey. You can train yourself to seek growth opportunities. You can challenge yourself. And then the very last one is exposing yourself to that constant ongoing learning that feels not so exciting in the moment when it happens, but it benefits you immensely when it comes to being the kind of person who can do the things you want to do and then have the things that you want to have as well as you progress, regardless of what your unlearning journey is. It's not about that. But as unlearners, we are all literally letting go and grabbing hold, unlearning and relearning consistently. And a growth mindset is definitely one of the mindsets that you need. It is an absolute must to have a growth mindset as an unlearner, because you are consistently learning, changing, and growing. And it is one of the things that will serve you immensely as you continue on that journey. Okay, my lovely unlearner, that was today's episode of the Unlearners podcast. I hope that you enjoyed this one. I hope it was fruitful. I hope that you got a lot of nuggets that you thought, oh, I'm going to go back and try this. I'm going to challenge myself. But also think about someone you know who would really value this episode. And I would really, really, really appreciate it if you would share this episode with them so that they too can apply a growth mindset to their unlearning journey. Because the more of us can apply this mindset, imagine the impact we could have on the world if we've got people who are consistently looking for opportunities to learn and change and grow and empower each other, but also see the evolution of humanity when they perform, when they engage. I think that that's powerful. And as someone who is married to unlearning, I dream about contexts where unlearners are consistently pouring into each other and challenging the status quo together. And I think this concept of the growth mindset is definitely one of the ways we can do that. So do share this episode with someone you know will really value it and take it and run with it, which is the most important thing. Thank you so much, Unlearner, for listening to this episode of the Unlearners podcast. It's been myself, Zanele Njapa, the Unlearning Lady. And for now, I'm saying goodbye, but I will see you on the next episode of the Unlearners podcast. Bye for now. The Unlearners. Learn, change. Learn, change. The Unlearn. I think if you take one courageous step at a time, it's going to be such a change. The Unlearn. Learn,